as I know. There's
No, no.
three tiers, correct?
Right, right. This is an important part of today's meeting too, right? Is trying to show the connection and schooling and the decision was be combining this schooling to give it systems uh, and and this is a big part of what got us into this space in terms of research, coming from Primavera Di Filippi. You may remember this name from previous sessions. She's out of Harvard, and at the helm of that MetaGov project that PolicyKit comes out of, which is a big part of our tooling, so that we can wrap around things like a Discord or other types of clients to get customizable moderation settings, but even beyond that, customizable actions, date and time triggers, right? And so we immediately saw that this was going to be very conducive to bottom-up quorums and getting out of default benevolent dictator moderation settings in particular clients to get to more expressive governance, right? This is something that's come out of that tooling from PolicyKit, and Haas has hacked away at it recently so that folks don't even have to really get onboarded to training what you usually have to know in terms of uploading documents to PolicyKit. Which is a possibility among the date and time triggers and other ways that it can wrap around a particular server. You can upload official documents, right? And there's integrations to the near chain already, right? And we've already started some on-chain stuff of our own in terms of microDAOs and stuff like this, and hopefully we can have some of this documentation or official documents for policies or for different governance decision-making documentation, semi-native or native to Stacks, the way that the PolicyKit is already native to near chain, right? And so then we have this capacity for on and off-chain processes, right? Not everything goes on-chain, but we can point to off-chain processes because Haas has hacked away at PolicyKit so that just the most recent thread, right, is what gets uploaded automatically as an official document and potentially can go on chain in the future, right, and things like this. And this is usually not possible, but what it does is it opens up the capacity to do everything right in Discord, which is, for obvious reasons, an advantage in user experience and flow. And so this is what's going on under the hood now in those channels of active issues and formal proposals. That wasn't necessarily there before. We had a much simpler implementation before. And now we've incorporated this bottom-up quorum period that you'll see expressed in, how much days are left, right, to participate in dialogue, right, in consensus. And then, you have a move to formal proposals after a certain amount of time has passed automatically. Nobody has to do this. This is something that wouldn't have been as manual before Haas being so head down for some weeks. And once it's informal proposals, right, there's this dissent mechanism. PolicyKit knows whether or not you participated in the thread before in this preliminary consensus phase, right? And if you have, just through emoji reactions or being mentioned or other things like this, PolicyKit knows that your dissent matters, right? And will include it and stop the whole proposal from becoming formalized, right? But this should be very rare, if not, never the case, because of some of the modeling and system design that we're going to layer on top of it. But as of now, we haven't, except for the previous session, introduced people to how to combine this tooling with the modeling yet. The systems model, which includes the clans that you mentioned. And this is where we are in these sessions, right? Trying to show the difference and distinctions between using this tooling as we are now, as people are just getting used to it, which kind of makes sense to do it without the models attached to it. to not hit people over the head with too many new things. But today we will. We'll if you weren't exposed to that tooling already, right? Haas, maybe you can give a demo for the folks that haven't seen. There's Kaylee here and now Jake. You guys can get a little better sense of all the words I just said live if Haas is up for it. Thank you, Haas.
Yeah, I'm up for it. I'm here for the shit. Let's do this work. Consensus flow. How does consensus flow? Is this some sort of question about, I guess, sewage or something? It's not. I promise. Let me show what's good. So, consensus flow. Consensus starts from active issues. As I think you, Kaylee, you've been, as an example, you've been involved in the current issue around expediency. And you see, like some people expressing that they want STX more than XBDC. Also, like you asked for like support around like, learning how to swap. This is all about consensus. This is just like describing a potential issue that hit people or impacts people, mentioning these people who are impacted, and then like working through it through dialogue. Like this all happens in Discord. It sounds like a simple discussion, and it is, but the impact is bigger than what it seems like. This is gathering the minds, Merrick's contributions, Friedker, mine, just like looking, feeling the room, if there is consensus, then acting on that feeling. Since there is no like strong disagreement, we can just like act on that, like within this process. It's not like an on-chain decision that has to be passed after voting or something. There is no voting here. We've acted without voting. There has not been strong disagreement here. There's been, I think, even strong alignment. How the dude Freaker who's been really struggling with BTC to STX, helping someone learn about swapping. An actual opportunity for Merck to learn about like XBDC and share his learnings about it. It's all of these invisible exchanges, helping each other, supporting each other to find a shared position on this issue. And our shared position on this issue, especially like just like taking this as a use case, we've come to consensus around how to do this and how to execute this. How can we support people who wanna know more about this and so on? Which is like just like have an open space to reach a shared position on an issue. That's basically it. There's two components to this: opening the issue and active issues and discussing it, and just the formality of saying that this has happened. Because if there should not be any dissent when we come to this time. And I think Juliet has mentioned like a point about accessibility and reaching out to people that might have not seen the issue, for example, and this is a valid point. But active issues, the issue itself is open for 5 days. there's definitely could be some work in making this more accessible, in actually even letting more people know about it. But the discussion, the deliberation time that hasn't ended yet, we have like even 2 days for people to present strong disagreement or dissent before it moves to the formal proposals, the formality itself. After it moves to formal proposals, this just goes through 2 days of giving people time to, if there was some gaming of the process, there is still time to actually halt it and stop it. And this is all about just this as a safe mechanism. It should never be used if we're still in this trustful community, and if we all find consensus together. That's my demo. Any questions?
I have one question. So, taking your example as the example, would those discussions, if one of us, say me, would the outcome be different if I said, like, would the outcome be different based on feeling, or would it be like, as long as somebody in the discussion disagree, then it cannot proceed? For example, there's probably a difference between, say, I don't like it, but I don't like, it's not like I hate it or anything. I just express the feeling like, yeah, this is probably not the best idea, not like it's not a good idea, it's not a bad idea, but it's just not, I don't think it's just not, yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah,
But
I know.
is there a difference between like, oh, I really hate it, like it shouldn't go ahead? Would that have affected the outcome for you to take it to the next level, which is the posting it on a formal formal issue?
I'd like to speak to this like from a community level. I think I'll let you speak to it from like a design level, Harold. So that from a community understanding and a community perspective, if there is actual like disagreement and strong feelings or even weak feelings, we should go through them together. So why is that happening? How can we support you in this? Does this weigh over the good of the collective, and how can we put your own good and the collective's good on the same grounds or on the same level? For me, this is how I see it. I think for STX, for example, one resistance that might arise if people didn't have STX. But if people didn't have STX, they're not in the Stacks community. And if they don't, also like we're still gonna provide a provision that says like, hey, let's have a pool for people who don't have STX to have like transaction fees to swap the XBDC to STX, or another way, like this is just like think of it as like how to accommodate these needs and how to meet these needs. Just like what's the word? Sponsor the transaction. This is tech that already exists. You can still sponsor the transactions and have like someone who might pick this up. It can be like a whole community mutual aid thing, because it's still like the transaction fees themselves are really low in Stacks right now. So like I could just like take a head count of people, like how many of you could pay the 0.1 STX in fees to help someone swap? Say yes. Or
Yes. I
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, so it's basically that. It's
I'm too cheap. I'm joking. It's cool. It's cool.
if you're cheap, I wouldn't say the word. I won't insult you because we're recording, but even if you're cheap, there are
Ways
countless
around it. Right?
generous people. I know you're joking also by the.
But there are ways
But,
around
yeah.
trying to meet everybody's needs and consensus, right? You come to a different consensus, hopefully through more and more discussions. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since we're in this is something that is unique in the stacks community. Just and I hope I don't trigger American exceptionalism like feelings. Is disalignment around like, hey, let's help people, or let's I could help you out intrinsically, because of I don't know, it just happened in the sex community, and I can point to many examples, but enough to see there's everyone in this meeting, except Fred.
No, thank you kindly, House.
Okay, so what if I just give another scenario? What if I hate it? I'm like the only. I'm not saying this will happen. I just like to think it through to understand it better by giving you examples so I can understand the whole thing better. So if there are 20 people in the room, everybody says yes, and everybody's like super hyped, like, yeah, we're gonna go to the moon. And then I'm like, I hate it. Like, do you still try to talk me, like, sort of try to understand me and say, why do you hate it? And are there ways we can support you and maybe come to a slightly different consensus where you are not necessarily you are in, but you are not out. You are like relatively satisfied, but not the happiest guy alive. Something like that.
I think Harold can speak better to this, but what I'd say is, if someone is being an asshole, everyone can detect asshole energy, and just like, okay, get the fuck out of here. Is basically the answer. And that's why we don't have like on-chain shit, because it's even difficult to kick people out of on-chain communities, and it's just like, oh shit, let's create a new DAO, for example, or something like that, which requires more design, especially like around consensus systems, not democracy. If someone is not being an asshole though, and is actually presenting genuine, understandable objections to something, this is just like human nature. Yeah, like, yes, of course we understand what you're going through, since you're giving us this experience, or you're sharing this experience with us. I think that's basically my perspective on it.
No, yeah, thank you kindly, House. And Hero, precise. You so-called specifically, I'm thinking of David Graeber, the late David Graeber, who's a big place in the kernel research, right? That big fellowship, research fellowship, and some of his thoughts around consensus, right? Precisely being, right, disagreement, but not enough disagreement to stop, the collective consensus, right? Is a particular trait of consensus, with the flexibility, right? Flexibility to go back and if that suspicion or subtle suspicion turns into a more concrete suspicion about some of your reservations around a particular issue, position, there should be flexibility, right, in the consensus and the collective, right, that feeds the certainty that it's okay that even if you don't wholly agree, right, to hold back the disagreement. But in that one case that you mentioned, right, where you absolutely hate something, right, this is an indicator of the beneficial things that can come of what Haas was talking about in terms of running through feelings, right, with each other, right, from the stronger to the weaker, right. But in the strong feelings, right, I think this is where a whole lot of innovation can occur, right, a whole lot of the hidden capital between each other can start to emerge. To Haas's point about the things that are usually invisible, starting to already occur in some of these spaces that are built for consensus to happen, right? And this is kind of the whole crux of not splitting the minds before they have a chance of consensus with voting on certain things and having a majority vote decide certain things, right? And so I think this is, your language particularly, Hero, and your answers as well, Haas, speak to some of the nuances of consensus that get missed. Like so much to the point, right, that more kind of dogmatic definitions of consensus have some folks not wanting to, even use the word consensus, right? But I think it's these nuances that lend itself to some of the more truer sense of the word, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of the protocols that surround the consensus that maximize your capacities for consensus that I think we'll touch on again a little bit later too for folks. But yeah, thank you kindly here for those good questions. And for the demo, Haas, again, thank you. We'll remind folks that the demo happened and the floor is still open for me for the questions.
Yeah, thank you both. I think that was a really great insight.
I'd also like to add to this, Hero. I've been involved in like professional spaces for 5 years, maybe. And the only time that it was almost consensus, unspoken consensus, all the time. But it was only like 2 cases of asshole-ishness. And both of them relied on insecurity and ego. That was like the only time. It was not like based on actual concerns or disagreement. And the collective, even in that environment, decided to just dismiss those, and these people just moved along and actually quit the company and just like became, I don't know, mercenaries or something. I don't know. There's a difference between freelancers and mercenaries, and it's a clear distinction between.
Yeah, that's interesting. But then these humans, you said ego, right, and other traits. These are quite common human natures everywhere. No?
I think I am not an American or British or whatever. I'm just Egyptian, and we don't have that culture. If someone has ego, they're just insecure, and they're mostly dismissed because egotistical people never rise through the ranks in developer circles. It's always about like improving yourself as a leader, even like if leader as in not just like managing people or whatever, just like pushing people, doing the job that the HR assholes should do, for them through like care work that isn't acknowledged, through like taking on like work that they can do if they're like depressed or something. It's all about just like this mutual aid thing, especially like in a poor country like Egypt. But I've never had the experience of like an environment that is full of egotistical assholes. You're certainly not one of them, Hero, or anybody here except Fred.
I'm just putting scenarios out there to test the resiliency of this model, if you like, and what happens in different situations, if you like. But I guess
this is important.
You wouldn't.
This is also important.
Yeah, you wouldn't have invited that person at the beginning, maybe into the discussion in the first place, if you didn't think he was a person of good minds. I think we said that yesterday or something, you know. So the likelihood that happening is less already, because at the beginning there's already some sort of filtering process.
But we still make mistakes, and we have to acknowledge that we're humans, and you know, impressions can fool you when it comes to like alignment or like even like intrinsic motivation culture or any of that kind of consistency even, or it's just like just be a good person and empathetic and just like don't be an asshole. That's it. And hi in Atlas. Let me see. Just let me know how to call you, and so that I don't screw up your name.
Yeah, bro, just Nat. Everyone can just call me Nat or just call me Atlas or whichever one, bro. Hey, everybody as well. I just jumped in because I saw the room started.
Welcome. You're the second person here with a close accent to British accent with Hero. So neither of you are in the UK. You're in Bitcoin.
Bro. I'm in the UK. I'm in London, bro. I'm in London.
You just doxed yourself, dude.
I'm good with that. Everybody knows who I am in the London crypto community, bro. So I'm good with that, bro.
I just wanted to be clear that I recognize the accent.
Welcome, Atlas. Nice to see you on the call.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see everybody out as well. Great.
Let's do a warm welcome for the dude by just like introducing him to advocates and all that. I can just do a 5-minute intro to you, dude, to familiarize yourself with the advocates community. So, are you down, Nat?
Yeah, bro. I'm here, bro. I'm just rolling one, bro, and then I'm gonna go outside. I'm here, bro. I'm listening.
Okay, roll whatever you want. This is something that I think Fred would be interested in as well. I hope this doesn't get to the police. Let's get this rolling. So, advocates. So advocates was started to support small contributions from community. So if you feel like you've done something in the community, just like let us know and did a thing. You can also recognize people in props. Right now you're temp advox, so you don't have that power yet. But once you post like any small contribution that you do to this, so like maybe whatever you feel like you contribute to the ecosystem, just for doing those things, and you're an advocate. That's it. That's the screening process. Other than the join requests with the welcome team is just like is there to help you get in the system. You should have a buddy soon to talk to ask any questions. Who's an old advocate. But yeah, that's basically how to join the advocates. There's definitely like a lot of like governance work being done here. So we have the consensus flow. You can check it in active issues. If there's like an advocate community-wide issue, we discuss it there. And once we reach like a feeling of the room, the vibe let's go with this solution that we all agreed on or that we all formulated together, then that solution is implemented by the people who have access to the, for example, Freaker having access to the treasury, I'm having access to like the software that distributes rewards, source script, and we just execute that plan in Plainview, I guess. What else? Yeah, we have also journeys right now. This is still in, I don't know what's before alpha, but let's say alpha. Where if you think that you want to do something in London, like a meetup or something, or you want to build a project and don't have access to the Stacks grants, or you think you can't apply for a grant, or don't know if this is going to be a grant, just like post it on Discord and say, hey, shit, I could organize this or build this, or do some support work on the weekend. Can I have? Can I get supported? Can I be supported consistently outside of the algorithm? Because this is not simple, small tasks. This is a large task. It takes a lot of time. So can you guys help me? And we'll help you. One journey that we're working on right now is the Bitcoin Brazil Bitcoin Pizza Day. I'm gonna send the link in the meeting chat so that you can see like an example. I'll also tag you in Atlas. And that's a small intro.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much. It sounds great. And I mean, I've been reading a lot, jumping in and out of the channels just to catch up with what's going on and everything. So yeah, like, when you're in a million servers trying to look at everything at the same time. But yeah, since I've been in the community, I've just felt very, very much drawn to the community. It feels like when I first started getting into Bitcoin, how everybody was, and then 2017 happened, and then Maxis went somewhere else, and everybody else, just like, yeah. So I think everybody knows how that story goes. But yeah, man, it definitely sounds great what you guys are doing. Definitely glad to be a part of it. And yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to find more things to do, really, to just promote and to build.
Yeah, dude. Just come to me, mention me anywhere, send me a friend request, shower me with whatever questions that you have, and you'll find and get all the support that you need. Hey! Bitcoin hat. That's amazing. Love that.
Nice, love it. So you are Bitcoiner first, or you are altcoiner first?
I would say Bitcoin first. Like, you know what, right? Funnily enough, I'll tell you a bit of background about me, right? So when I came into the crypto game, I was just teaching people about Bitcoin randomly. people started paying me for teaching them about Bitcoin, and then somebody told me, look, you should start a consultancy teaching people about Bitcoin and blockchain. And that's literally how I just came into things. Like I was trying to build other projects and do other things, but at the time, so many people were just coming to me wanting to learn about crypto. And somebody just said to me one day, well, look, bro, you can't give all this time away for free, bro. It's like, you know, so that's kind of like how I got into things. And that's why I always kind of promote Bitcoin first, because I always believe that people should just at least understand Bitcoin before they try and dive down a rabbit hole of 1,000,001 altcoins.
Are you good with like writing stuff or like say speaking about it? What sort of form do you tend to educate or promote?
Well, at the moment, what I normally do is I've been educating people through just PDF guides, going out to offices really, and teaching like teams. You know, like people who want to get their businesses like into crypto and have crypto payments. That's where it kind of started, and then it was like people calling me up, you know, I've got this project. What do I do with it? Like, how do I write a white paper, so on and so forth, and then it just evolved. I think like everything is just learning. I mean, as it goes on, you know, even with Stacks, like as I said, I spent like the past year kind of like just diving down the Stacks rabbit hole before I even really started talking in the community, just been hanging around and saying hello every now and again, you know. But in the background, doing a bit of research, and you know, I just felt that as well with the NFTs, I didn't really jump on the NFT craze at the beginning because again, NFTs was introduced to me back in 2017. The concept of NFT, so I knew what it was before PFPs were being used as NFTs. So, you know, when the PFP craze came along, I was like, all right, so when's somebody going to do something with it? Like, you know, and then in that time I came across Stacks and I was like, wow, like that was like my fault. It was like, why is everybody doing this everywhere else but on Bitcoin? Because, you know, like I go back to Counterparty and, you know, we can go back as far as we want with smart contracts on Bitcoin. It's like, why are people building this shit everywhere else but on Bitcoin? And that's what brought me to Stacks. So, yeah.
Cool. It's cool. I love to hear your journey like that. It's amazing. And what about, how did you hear about Stacks Advocate?
Just exploring the server, you know. I mean, as I was just the hat I was just wearing, as I said, is a prototype for some of the hats that we're going to be doing as part of like our NFT collection. So yeah, I mean, just hearing that that somebody had developed something where we could do it on Bitcoin, I was just like, yo. So I've been exploring every corner of Stacks. If there's something going on in Stacks, like I want to be there, I want to know about it. So yeah, I think that's how I just came across it just exploring the server.
Well, welcome, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you. And yeah, I hope hopefully Haz did it justice. It's clear in terms of you know what all comes into what all goes into advocates, right? All different opportunities to carve paths for community support. You know, some of these questions from here, I'm sure I'm not mistaken that they're fairly intentional in terms of helping you through you know what exactly advocates is, and you know, as also a good foundation, you know, in terms of learning curve, as we've seen from at least from folks like Hero and others so far. We tend to be here weekly, and you know, we have some you know specific governance things going on as we are working through a governance lab, research and development. But you know, there's also a lot more going on in terms of what Haz mentioned around, you know, our approach to task creation, or so-called bounties, or what we're calling journeys, right? And all the different ways that, you know, you can go right into compensation and funding with the grants program in a different path than what might feel a little bit more inaccessible, the professional-looking grants or what have you in the conventional paths for the grants program. So these are all things that you know are going to be important for folks coming in, and there's a lot of other interesting things, right, in terms of how we're organizing ourselves. in a bottom-up, horizontal way, right? Where anybody's voice can be heard, as Haas, I'm sure, mentioned in his 5 minutes. But we have some indigenous research guiding us as well, and it's very much what this session is about. We have some tooling coming out of research groups that Haas is mentioning is going on under the hood in these channels, and we touched on a little bit of that earlier. All these sessions are recorded too, so anything that doesn't make sense, besides just interrupting us, shutting us up, and asking in these live sessions, recordings are there as well for some of the more nuances that we might miss. But right before you came in, Haas and Hero were going back and forth around some of this tooling and decision-making tooling, to be exact, right? Governance being the particular topic of today. And some of the models that we have for bottom-up organization that come from these indigenous modes. And consensus was the topic. And they were going back and forth in a pretty good conversation around the nuances of consensus, how that's been built into the tooling. And one of the last things I wanted to say on that, based on I think where they left off, was evidence-based consensus is a huge part of indigenous modes, right? There's this concept of misusing your power or your voice, right? Haas and Hero giving the asshole example as an extreme, that is very, it's plausible, it's possible, right? But it's definitely would be an example of this misuse of power, right? Whether it's misrepresentation of the collective, or it's harmful, language to the collective. So, this is an important part of the indigenous modes, and maybe what might be considered offboarding and warning protocols that might be incorporated into some of the tooling, along with this decision-making tooling as well down the line. I just wanted to mention that evidence-based consensus, which, in the indigenous context, oftentimes gets removed from so-called scientific evidence, right? Which I think a lot of times is the case in indigenous contexts, and a lot of times the case in these tech-based contexts. So this is an interesting point of discussion, and I think there's some questions from the last session that can help us get back on track in terms of where we left off in talking about the difference in the tooling that you see as is, being used as is right now, without the layers of systems models being activated, so to speak, on top of it. And these are some of the first sessions where we're getting a chance to expose folks to these models that come right from direct indigenous dialogue, matrilineal indigenous dialogue, right? And one of the questions was from Ryder, and I really appreciated that helped guide the session. And it was a question around the processes, right? Right before you even see an active issue, right? In the context of the system design, because as of now, it's pretty much open. We don't have any explicit structures for representation in our clan system design, 3-tiered clan system design, turtle, wolf, and bear, right? Jacob mentioned earlier. But these sessions will be part and parcel to helping establish that, along with actual use of the tooling, right? To get folks comfortable with each other, meeting each other real time, using the tooling to do so, right? One of the things that comes into tooling for folks who are maybe just coming in are these bottom-up quorums, or maybe I'm conflating this session with the last. I haven't mentioned this yet, but we have these capacities for bottom-up quorums with this tooling, where you have windows of time to participate in the consensus. And the question from Ryder around, how do we know what issues get, what are some of the system design approaches to how issues get there, right, to the active issues channel? And as of now, it's open, but hopefully very soon we'll have examples of us using the tooling along with the models, and with the models, we'll be able to have a Wolf Clan representative, or a temporary Wolf Clan representative, and a sub-representative or a sub-head And along with the traits of these different clans, right? Not just the namesake, right, or just mere categories of animals, but again, taken right from this direct indigenous dialogue. And of those traits of wolf is this characteristic of being the well, right? This function, these deep functions, the clan system is attached to. In the indigenous context, there's these deep functions of gathering the minds and consensus that the wolf is attached to, right? These principles of regeneration and commons that all of the clans have a sense of, right, and a cosmology, right, behind these different animals, right, or these different clans. And in this open source context, we've related it to open source convictions and values, privacy, the things that go into the language of can't be evil, right, which a big part of that is not just infrastructure, right? And we learned this from Harvard research, which now using some of the tooling from Primavera de Filippi at the helm of this, the MetaGov project, which PolicyKit comes out of, which is what's under the hood in these channels. There's this. I'm actually blanking on my train of thought now, actually, but there's this capacity for attaching all of these values for long-term sustainability, right, that goes along with distributed power, not just decentralized architecture, right, or infrastructure, right, but distributed power, bottom-up power, right, and these clan systems are very much a core piece to how you build this into decision-making, long-term, not just in the static. And blockchain-based systems have a real problem with, once they move out of static beginnings, right, they can tend toward concentration of wealth and power, which Primavera warns, right, can take us away from all the beautiful things that are possible with blockchain-based systems and end us up in a scary place where we have a bunch of unseen, hidden power of concentration of power, wealth extraction, right? Extraction in general, I should say. And she points also to indigenous modes, right? In terms of other folks, needing to do this being an important part of the research for blockchain-based systems. And the clan system is one of the first steps folks can see in terms of where indigenous modes, or what we have to learn from indigenous modes, and being able to attach to deeper functions that speak to long-term sustainability, to the way we organize ourselves and the way that we come to decisions amongst ourselves is seems like a fundamental thing to distributed power in the long term, right? And so this is a big part of the different traits. Right? I mentioned the well, the gathering of the minds, and the creating of space for consensus that comes with Wolf Clan, but especially those that opt into the most responsibility in Wolf Clan, right? The Wolf Clan representatives, and the subheads, right? Where they're always moving, right? Kind of another trait, right, of Turtle, Wolf, and Bear, constantly moving, the spark, right, the catalyst, so pushing forward ecosystems, right? This is very much how active issues, come into the active issues channel when actually using these systems design models with the tooling, right? It's open now, but when we're actually using these models, this is how issues get there. Either the subhead recognizes there's minds gathering around an issue. Hero gave a great example in the last session around, or Andre, I think, butchering the pronunciation of the name, but mentioned a comment section in the YouTube channel, right? This is even further removed from the Advocate server or even the Discord server of Stacks, but it's still related to the Stacks ecosystem, and a good example of something to bring into somewhere in the Advocates, whether it's open discussion or somewhere, and gather the minds around this, right? And hopefully someone in Wolf Clan or somebody that is opted into responsibility of looking like a Wolf Clan representative, but whether male or female, because it'll be both, can pick up this issue, right, and ensure that it gets into active issues channel, right, and then there's a flow from there that also includes the clan design. In terms of what happens, in terms of a preliminary consensus process, a formal consensus process that you see in in the form of those channels now. But when layered with the systems model, you'll actually have changes to how much time is being applied in these windows of time, right? Based on the people in those clans that make up those clans, deciding on what is the best window of time for them based on their different time zones, right? Or their different flows, right? Like meetings, right? And most of the consensus happens in that preliminary phase. And 9 times out of 10, there's very little deliberation needed in the formal. By the time you get to the formal decision making, and we have flowcharts to show this, stuff as well in the meeting chat. Hopefully not too far above, and we can get to that a little bit in a little bit. But I think that that question from the last session from Ryder helped guide us into exactly what this tooling starts to look like with the system layer added, system model, system design added to it. And so I'll open up the floor and see if there's any questions for now before getting into some of the other flows and asking folks to take a look at some of the diagrams in the meeting chat. But thank you kindly, y'all. I'll open the floor. Thank you kindly for enduring my long-windedness. Beautiful. Let's mouse that is